morning, race fans. Hollywood has given us the quote, "I live my life a quarter mile at a time." However, Santa Fe, California has given us the real life version of Dominic Toretto. He's fast and furious, and he's a family man too. And all of his legendary story comes to life in his latest book, Don the Snake Prudhomme, Beyond the 1320. A special good morning to the greatest drag racer of all time. Don, how's it going in California?
Oh, it's a great morning, and it's great to talk to you.
So great to have you here. I mean, like I said, I feel like your story is true Hollywood tale, Hollywood magic, pretty much. Going from painting and working on cars to becoming a motorsports Hall of Famer. You basically grew what we know as the National Hot Rod Association into what it is today.
Yeah, well, I like to think I had a part in it, along with Don Garlitz and Shirley Muldowney and Tom the Mongoose McEwen, people like that. We started in the early days and tried to build the sport up. Tried to really turn it into something, and I think we did a pretty good job. I know Mongoose with his promotions and stuff, he was awfully good, and so here we go.
Paying tribute to that great rivalry.
Yeah.
In the form of a T-shirt here this morning. I always like to put some cool collectibles on the set, for our guests. For those at home that do not know about Don, as you should, I mean, 30 plus year career as a driver, won titles in both the Top Fuel and Funny Car classes, took victories in 49 career events, 4 world championships, and he raced in 4 different decades. And now at 80 years old, and you don't look it at all, Don, and I'm not just saying that, you just won the Baja 1000 in Mexico. What continues to drive you to be this great racer, even at 80 years young?
Well, I enjoyed competing. That was the biggest thing. And then when I found the off-road racing, I found that I could do it just fine. I can't run with some of those young kids, but there was a lot of them in our class in Baja, and we ended up winning our class. So that made me feel pretty good. I think that kind of was the cherry on the top of the cake, because to win something like that, the Baja 1000, the Nora 1000, was quite an achievement. It was one of the toughest things I've ever done.
Oh, absolutely. And I remember in the past from listening to you in other interviews and even, of course, reading the book, I mean, you often said that when you were racing, winning was everything. And I think for those at home that don't know about the history of the sport, your era of race car drivers, especially with everyone essentially having access to maybe the same equipment, financially, what separated the teams and the drivers truly was the work ethic of the driver and the team and how hard that you worked on the car. What life lessons did you feel that your humble beginnings taught you in your pursuit of being a championship racer?
Well, I learned that the harder you work, the luckier you get. So I've become pretty lucky in the sport, but the work was the main thing, the dedication. I found something as a young kid, and it was just this niche I had for motorsports or for hot rods. And we started building up hot rods and buying junkyard parts and building up enough stuff to get a dragster together to take it out to the local drag strip. And that's where I fell in love with racing, was running, we were running like maybe 115 miles an hour at the time, but those are pretty big numbers in the late 50s,
Yeah, and Don, many times throughout the years having this job, I mean, the greatest part, of course, has been covering the legends, and great athletes like yourself in all of sports as a reporter. I often tell people that the great ones seem to kind of have split personalities. I think of covering Kobe Bryant or Tom Brady in particular, their ability to be humble, gentle, and kind away from competition. But when it's game time, they seem to flip a switch. And growing up watching you, I felt the very same way about you. When you pulled that visor down, you seem to become a different person.
Yeah, that's right. Matter of fact, the minute I pulled into the drag strip, I felt like a different person because it was all business then. And that was great, but there was times that I wish that I had more time with the fans and spent more time, talking to people, signing autographs. But I was just so engrossed into what I was doing and trying not to make any mistakes along the way and trying to make a living, actually, and that was the key thing, is is to win races and make money so you can go on to the next drag strip, the next track. That's before we had sponsors, you know.
Yeah, and speaking of legends, Don, I mean, the book quotes Mario Andretti a few times. We had him on the show, which was great. I know you and I spoke about that previously. We also had Willie T. Ribbs on with us, and a man that seemed to impact, to impact his life so much was Dan Gurney. I got some more collectibles here for you, an autograph of Dan Gurney. Dan is quoted in the book. He actually told you once, if you want something bad enough, you'll find a way. How have other great racers that you either race with, raced against, like Mario and Dan, impacted your career?
Well, they just did, because of their work ethics too were just extremely high. And AJ Foyt, you got to throw him in there too. I was just with him and Mario over the weekend at the Long Beach Grand Prix, and spend a little time. And it's always fun to catch up with the guys. Sit in AJ's lounge there and at the track, and we talk, and it's cool. I wish I could have recorded it, because AJ's he's quite a guy.
And Mario actually used to tease you about all the straight line racing. I know,
Yes.
At one point you were very much interested in IndyCar and F1, and even got close to the late great Niki Lauda. What was he like?
Well, it was wonderful. I got this opportunity to go to Bologna, Italy, and to do a car show for Goodyear. And while we're over there, a fellow by the name of Bernard Caillet, Goodyear had him looking after us, and took us over to the Ferrari plant, and got to meet Niki. He was in the garage. It was far different back in those days, the way their shop was compared to today's world. But it was so cool to see him. Of course, his head was all bandaged up because it was in '76. It was the year he was burnt real bad. But we went over to the racetrack across the street, their test track they have at Ferrari. And he took me for a ride in a 308 GTB Ferrari around the racetrack. And from that time on, I become a huge fan of Niki Lauda's, and of course, a big fan of Formula One. And that was back in the early days, and it wasn't exactly on television every week like it is now.
Don, I often think it's so cool for us to be able to ask legends about what was happening in the moment for them. You get this nickname, the Snake, from basically being so quick off the starting line. Now, you have this Christmas tree in front of you, the quarter mile, or as they say, the 1320, for anyone that was curious what that reference is. What's going through your mind? What are you feeling at that point as you line up for this drag race?
Well, it's a very very difficult thing to do, especially in today's world. Back then, when I was driving, especially the way our car was running, like the Hot Wheels car, heck, we had a 10th on the field, so it wasn't so tough at the starting line. But someone could leave on you, and you could drive around in half track or in the lights or something, because you had this performance advantage. But in today's world, you have to be very, very good on the Christmas tree, because that can make or break the race, is how you leave at the starting line. And the drivers nowadays, they really have it down to a science. Where I've been watching Brittany Force, and she's got probably the best running car out there. And unfortunately, she's been late a few times, and she's lost the race over that. And that's a tough pill to swallow when your whole team's dependent on you to get off the starting line quick. And so that's where I bailed out when I had to start leaving the starting line, first. I thought I had enough of this. And that's when I put Larry Dixon in the car and let some young dude or young gal take over those chores.
That was part one of our interview with legendary drag racer Don the Snake Prudhomme. Tune in next Monday for part two.